different time period of abandonment. Let alone their theory that Michael Jackson swallowed lorazepam pills, which would be altogether another time period of abandonment. Dr. Schaefer is the expert in the field. And based on the available evidence and the lack of medical records and the shipments and everything else I just recounted, it is a reasonable interpretation of what happened. But that may be a question that always remains unanswered. It may always remain unanswered how exactly that transpired in that private bedroom. But what you will know, based on the evidence in this case, is that Conrad Murray was a substantial factor in Michael's death as a result of everything we've talked about, and that Michael Jackson died as a result of propofol intoxication. So what did we hear from the defense? Well, we heard from a number of character witnesses. 5 different people came in and praised Conrad Murray. And there's a few important things to note. I'm certain they believed every word they said. They probably got good care. They were all treated in hospitals for something Conrad Murray is trained to do, hearts. They all had heart troubles. They were treated in a hospital. They were given stents. I think it was Andrew Guest who said there was a whole team of people helping. There were heart monitors. There was paperwork that had to be filled out. There were other personnel. There was equipment. And it was for their heart, something Conrad Murray is trained, evidently, to do. But even setting that aside, there are a few things to note about these witnesses. Number one, we didn't really hear about any witnesses that were under his current care and received those letters in the mail and told he would no longer be their doctor. Gary Cossey had a heart attack in 2000. I believe Andrew Guest had a heart problem in 2002. Dennis Hicks, 1999 or 2000. Ruby Mosley, I think in 2003. Miss Sampson, she did have a heart attack in 1995, then eventually was treated by Conrad Murray, which is interesting because Conrad Murray, she pointed out, was able to review the prior doctor's medical records in making his decision because the prior doctor kept medical records. And then she did say she had an incident in 2008 and 2009, but it was not clear from her testimony that that was in any way that she was left to fend for herself as Conrad Murray decided to take this position with Michael Jackson. But you did hear from a patient who is currently in active treatment from Conrad Murray at this time, and that was Robert Russell, if you remember. He was one of the phone calls during the time Conrad Murray was at 100 North Carrollwood. And Robert Russell said he got good treatment for his heart from Conrad Murray. But that he, in the midst of treatment and tests and waiting for results, not someone a decade prior or even months prior, but someone who was in the midst of treatment and concerned about his life, concerned about his heart and the test results, he felt completely abandoned and let loose by Conrad Murray. That was an existing patient under the care of Conrad Murray. But all the character witness the defense called, of all the patients Conrad Murray must have treated for heart troubles, they chose to call people who were not currently under the care of Conrad Murray. They were friends. They liked him. But there was no pending test result, no pending stent operation about which they testified. Then the defense called a number of witnesses. They called Dr. Metzger. Dr. Metzger came in to testify about Michael Jackson's prior request for an IV sleep aid. Dr. Metzger and these other witnesses enlightened us on the standard of care and some of the issues that are relevant in this case. Dr. Metzger told us,
is there any amount of money that you would have that would have convinced you to give him intravenous propofol in his house?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. It's not a shocking statement. It's a predictable statement. Of course he wouldn't. Nobody would. No one ever has until Conrad Murray. We heard from Nurse Lee, who shared with us that Michael told her, no, it's safe. it's safe as long as a doctor is monitoring me. The doctor told me it's safe as long as I am monitored.
He said, doctors have told me that it's safe. I just need to be monitored.
That was Michael's state of mind. Nobody's disputing that he wanted the propofol. But he also wanted a doctor there. I'm sure Michael Jackson had the means and resources to get propofol if he really needed to. There is no evidence that Michael Jackson ever sought out or did such a thing without having a medical doctor present. Michael Jackson was not reckless. Michael Jackson had a life ahead of him. Michael Jackson had 3 children that he loved dearly. He wanted propofol to help him sleep. He wanted a doctor with eyes on him to make sure he was safe. Dr. Waldman came in evidently to testify about Demerol. But Dr. Waldman also told us some useful information. And that is that lorazepam is a controlled narcotic controlled by the DEA, and it needs to be kept under lock and key when a doctor has assumed the medical care of a patient. He also told us about the requirement for medical records. And if you recall, I think in my question I asked him if it was required for 3 years, and he said, actually, I think it's 7 years when dispensing controlled substances, of which lorazepam is a controlled substance.
Dr. Waldman, would you agree with the statement as it relates to controlled substances? That state and federal laws require physicians to maintain adequate and accurate medical records. Would you agree with that?
Yes, sir.
And also, as put out by the Medical Board of California, would you agree with this statement as it relates to controlled substances, that a physician is required to keep drugs in a securely locked and substantially constructed cabinet or safe?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Locked up. And medical records kept, documenting which drugs were dispensed. We don't have a single record of any lorazepam being dispensed other than the shipment records from Tim Lopez from the pharmacy. We have Dr. Paul White. And Dr. White was a very notable person in the field of anesthetics. He did do early research into the clinical use of propofol. Dr. Schaefer has been his colleague and friend for many years. Dr. White is now retired. And what you were presented from Dr. White was junk science. It was disappointing. Dr. Schaefer said it was disappointing. It was garbage science. And it's sad that Dr. White came in here for whatever motive he may have had, whether there are financial considerations that he did not share, we don't know. But the foundation of trust between a patient and doctor, that theme extends to the ability to trust science. That it's backed up by academic rigor and testing and data. And that there are principles, fundamental principles of science and truth-seeking behind the science. What Dr. White came in and did was sad for science and sad for truth-seeking. Dr. White came in here, and we know from his first report, inexplicably, he doesn't want to call it a report, he wants to call it a letter. It's a report that was provided to the people in Discovery that laid out his opinions in this case.